Okay, so in this video, we're going to be talking about lesson 3.3 in our Algebra 1 unit about solving equations. This one is going to cover multi-step equations. So there's really nothing new today. The big difference is going to be combining things that we did in Unit 1 together with the things that we did in Unit 3 so far. So in your packet, we're going to be on page 8. Go ahead and find that. And then just a reminder, today we'll be working on our math thinking and class practice. You should have some time to do that proficiency practice after this. And tomorrow we'll be working on doing the proficiency practice, CFU, and the Delta math. So these first 4 questions are warm-up, reviewing what we did in the last unit. I would highly encourage you to take a second, actually take a minute or two for each one, show your inverse operations and solve the equation, and then come back and we will go over them together. Okay, hopefully you made that choice to go ahead and try these out first. Remember, even if you got the first couple, you can always pause after that and try to do as much of these as you can on your own. So just as a reminder here, I'm always going to suggest that you make a little line right down the equal sign to keep your left and right sides separate. And then we're just looking at what's being done to this x and how can we undo it. So we're multiplying by 2 and then we're adding 4. So to undo this, we're going to start by undoing that plus 4, which is going to be minus 4. We'll do that from both sides. The plus 4 and the minus 4 make 0. So I just have 2x. 6 minus 4 is 2. Then we'll think about how to undo that coefficient of 2. Well, that coefficient of 2 is just multiplication. Every coefficient is just multiplying by the variable. So I'll divide by 2 on both sides, and I get x on this side. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. So x equals 1 is my solution. On this next one, my equal sign is right there. I've got some negatives in here, which just makes this a little bit more difficult. You got to pay attention to those things. So if I see this minus 2, I'm going to do the inverse operation of add 2 to both sides. On this side, I'll get 3. On this side, that makes 0, and I just have my negative 3x. From there, I'm going to divide by negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 just makes 1, so I have x. 3 divided by negative 3 makes negative 1. And then I'll rewrite it, x equals negative 1. That'll be your final answer. Over here, we've got fractions, but just a reminder, the first step here stays the same. I see this plus 1. I need to do the opposite, which is minus 1 from both sides. That leaves me with, because this is 0, I get 1/3 x equals 7. And then I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So if I have a 1/3 x, I'm going to multiply by 3 over 1 on both sides. 3 over 1 times 1 over 3 just makes 1. And 7 times 3 is 21 over 1, which is just 21. And the last one, we've got the negative x involved here. Anytime you see negative x, just go ahead and put that negative 1 there to remind you. And we'll keep going. I see a plus 2, so I need to do minus 2 on both sides. 6 minus 2 is 4. This makes 0, so I just have negative 1x. And then just like any coefficient, I'm going to divide by negative 1, because anything divided by itself just makes 1. 4 divided by negative 1 makes negative 4. And I will finish by rewriting as an x equals equation. So that's what we did last week. Next up, let's review what we did in the last unit. So when we talk about standard form, the big thing we remember here is that the variable term comes first. And so we could have something like 5x plus 2 or 1/3 x plus 1. In general, we would just write it as ax plus b, something times x plus or minus a number. So that's what our goal is when we're simplifying expressions. So from here, we'll review some combining like terms and distributive property before we move on and combine these two ideas together into equations. So remember, when we are combining like terms, our big focus is making sure we get the signs right. So if I combine a positive 2x and a positive 1x, I get a positive 3x. Then when I combine my positive 3 and my negative 1, I get a positive 2. I don't need that positive sign in front. We can just write 3x plus 2. On this next one, we have something that needs to be really careful with, and that is this negative x. So if I have 5x and minus x, I have 4x. And then a positive 4 and a positive 6 makes positive 10. So 4x plus 10. From there, we'll talk about the distributive property. If we're taking 2 times x plus 3, I'm going to take 2 times x and 2 times 3. We're going to do those separately. 2 times x is 2x.
Lunch students are now dismissed for lunch.
And 2 times 3 is positive 6. So I'm going to write positive 6 or plus 6. From here, just be careful with your negative signs. 2 times x is still 2x. This time, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. On this one, I'm distributing a negative 2. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times positive 3 is negative 6. And here, one more negative sign. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times a negative 3 is a positive 6. So be careful with those pluses and negatives. Those are the ones that people still get wrong. Even if you know what you're doing, you'll make a mistake every once in a while on. So go ahead and flip over to the next page. We've got 5 equations to do, and all of them kind of work the same way. You're going to have to start by simplifying first and then solving for x. I want to remind us that our goal is still the same. That has not changed. Our goal is still to get to the point where we have x is equal to a number. But to do that, we're going to have to simplify first because if you can look here, our equation is not in standard form. There's actually an x in 2 different places. That's going to make it difficult to solve. So we'll start by just combining our like terms. I've got an x plus a 5x. That makes 6x. I've got a positive 4 and a negative 3, which makes a positive 1. And we didn't do anything to the other side of the equation, so it still equals 7. Now we can start solving using our inverse operations. We don't want to solve using inverse operations until we've already simplified as much as we can. So just like before, we're going to do our add subtract step first. So I see a plus 1. I'm going to do a minus 1. That's going to make 0. So 6x equals 7 minus 1 is 6. And I'll divide by 6 because that's my coefficient. That makes 1. So x equals 6 divided by 6, which is 1. And then we can plot it on our number line. So make sure you label 0, and I would label the number you're going with. From there, we'll go ahead and check our answer. So we think our answer is x equals 1. So anywhere there was an x in the equation, we'll put a 1, and we'll start simplifying. We'll do our multiplication first. So 5 times 1 is 5. And then we'll see what that equals. So 1 plus 4 is 5. Plus 5 makes 10. Minus 3 makes 7. So yes, that is our solution. And that's how pretty much all of these are going to go. You're either going to have to combine like terms and then solve your equation, or distribute and then solve your equation, or distribute and combine like terms and then solve your equation. So let's just go ahead and do a few of these. I will probably go through those 2-step equation parts, the last part, pretty quickly. It is a video, though, so you can always pause and listen to it again. So this one, we're going to combine like terms. I've got a 6x and I've got a minus 4x. That makes 2x. Then I've got a positive 2 and a positive 1. That makes positive 3. From there, I see this plus 3, so I'm going to go minus 3. That makes 0. So I have 2x on this side. 7 minus 3 is 4. And then I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. 2 divided by 2 makes 1. So 1x equals 4 divided by 2 is 2. On this one, I'm going to be combining like terms on the other side of the equation. So I've got an x and a negative 6x. That makes negative 5x. I'm still going to put that first. A 3 and a 1 makes 4, or positive 4. Then I'll start undoing. I see a plus 4, so I'm going to go minus 4. That gives me 5 on this side. 9 minus 4 is 5. On this side, the 4 plus 4 and minus 4 make 0. So I know I have a negative 5x. Then I'll divide by that coefficient of negative 5 to make 1x. 5 divided by negative 5 is negative 1. And I'll state my solution x equals negative 1 like that. The next two problems, we've got the distributive property. So I'm going to distribute first, and then it's going to be a two-step equation. So when I do this, we've already actually done this one. 2 times x makes 2x. 2 times 3 makes 6. Didn't do anything over here, so it still equals 10. Just bring it down. And now I'll solve my equation. I see plus 6, so I'll go minus 6. That makes 0, so I just have 2x. 10 minus 6 is 4. Then I'll divide by 2, because the 2 is my coefficient. That makes 1. And 4 divided by 2 makes 2. We haven't checked our answer with one of these yet, but I just want to show you that real quick. So anywhere there was an x in the equation, I'm just going to go ahead and write a 2. So instead of 2 times x plus 3, I'm going to write 2 times 2 plus 3. And if I remember my order of operations, I do my grouping first. So 2 plus 3 is 5, and 2 times 5 is 10, which is what we should have gotten. We were trying to check, did that equal 10? And it does. Okay, our last one here, we're going to distribute this 5 first. So I'm going to have 5x. Be careful here. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. And this side of the equation is negative 10. That didn't change at all. Over here, I see a minus 5, so I'm going to plus 5. That's going to make 0. And so I just have 5x. Negative 10 plus 5 is negative 5. And our last step here, I'll divide by 5, divide by 5. 5 divided by 5 just makes 1x. Negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1, so I have x equals negative 1 as my final answer. And there we go. General process here is we're going to simplify first. That might be just doing the distributive property. That might be just combining like terms, or that might be doing both. You didn't see any of those here, but there are some on your proficiency practice where it says do the distributive property, then combine like terms, then you do your adding, subtracting, and multiplying and dividing steps. But it's just putting two things together that we've already done. So hopefully this is a good chance to practice a little bit more.